The old fishing village of Windhollow sat on the edge of the world, cradled by the sea and caressed by the wind. It was a place steeped in lore and legends, where the locals spoke in hushed voices about the darkness that swept in with the storms. But for years, the stories had been nothing more than warnings told to children to keep them inside on stormy nights. That changed on the night of the black tide. It was a night no one would ever forget. The skies above Windhollow darkened unnaturally early, and a chill set in, twisting its way through the narrow, cobbled streets. The waves began to churn violently, lashing against the cliffs with a force that made the villagers tremble in their homes. Old Man Ramsey, the village's lighthouse keeper, was the first to notice something was wrong. The sea had turned black, a thick, inky darkness that swallowed everything in its path. He tried to sound the alarm, but his voice was drowned out by a sudden, deafening roar of wind. He peered through his spyglass, straining to see through the sheets of rain, when he spotted it. Something was moving beneath the waves. A shape, no, a mass, something enormous, its dark form barely distinguishable against the shadowy waters. It moved with an unnatural grace, as if it were the storm itself, alive and breathing. Old Man Ramsey's hands shook as he watched, transfixed. It was then that he saw them figures emerging from the water, tall and twisted, their eyes glowing with an eerie, unholy light. He backed away from the window, his heart pounding like a drum. These were not men, these were creatures of nightmare, born of the deepest abyss. They were the wraiths of the black tide, beings from the village's darkest legends, said to rise from the ocean's depths during the fiercest storms to claim lost souls. The first scream echoed from the edge of the village, where the fishing boats were moored. The creatures had reached the shore. One by one, the screams multiplied, cutting through the roaring wind like knives. Shapes moved through the streets, barely visible in the flickering lamplight, shadows chasing shadows. People barricaded themselves in their homes, praying to survive until morning. Doors were slammed shut, windows nailed closed, but it didn't matter. The wraiths passed through solid walls as if they were made of mist. They left behind only silence, cold, empty silence. By midnight, the storm was at its peak. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the chaos below. Old Man Ramsey watched helplessly from the lighthouse as the village was consumed by darkness. He turned to the massive horn on the balcony, a relic from the old days, meant to warn ships of danger. He took a deep breath and blew with all his might. The sound echoed across the village, a mournful wail that seemed to slice through the storm. For a moment, everything went still. The wind died, the rain stopped, and the wraith-like figures turned their heads towards the lighthouse. Ramsey's breath caught in his throat. He had drawn their attention. He stumbled back inside, his heart racing, and tried to secure the door, but it was too late. A cold, wet breeze crept through the cracks, and the lights flickered. He felt the temperature drop as the darkness pooled at his feet, coiling up like smoke. They were inside. He backed away, whispering a prayer, as the shadows twisted and took form. Faces emerged, twisted, ghostly faces that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. They stared at him with eyes like burning coals, their mouths moving silently. "Why?" Ramsey whispered, his voice trembling. "Why do you torment us?" One of the wraiths stepped forward, its eyes locking onto his. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of shattering glass. "We are the storm," it whispered, its breath freezing the air around it. "You called us long ago, and we have come to claim what is ours." Ramsey shook his head, tears streaming down his face. He knew then what it meant. The villagers had forgotten, but the sea never did. Long ago, a pact had been made, a sacrifice for safety, a life for a life. But the pact had been broken, and now the storm had come to collect. The wraiths moved closer, their forms blurring into one great, seething darkness. Ramsey screamed, a sound lost in the howling wind, as the shadows engulfed him. The lighthouse went dark. When the storm finally passed, the sun rose over a village transformed. The streets were empty, the houses abandoned. Only the ruins of the lighthouse remained, a blackened shell standing against the dawn. And from the sea, a low, mournful sound echoed, a horn's call, faint and distant, as if calling from the depths of the abyss. The few who dared to return to Windhollow said it was the sound of the lost souls, forever trapped in the storm. To this day, no one sails near Windhollow when the skies darken. The sea there is restless, and the wind carries whispers. And if you listen closely on stormy nights, you might just hear the echo of that old horn, calling the storm back to claim what is owed.